But I did want to just address one other thing real quick here, which is, again, kind of sad. And that is that this was the 20-year anniversary this week of the death of Owen Hart. Owen Hart passed away at the Over the Edge pay-per-view. I believe it was May 23rd. 1999 was the date. And I had met Owen one time. I met Owen less than a year before he died. It was the very first Monday Night Raw I ever went to. I won tickets to a luxury box at the Continental Airlines Arena, which later became the Izod Center in New Jersey. And before the show, they sent 4 wrestlers to the box to meet with us in private, take pictures, sign autographs. And the 4 names that we got were Owen Hart, Mick Foley, and this was just a few weeks after the Hell in a Cell match, so this guy looked like fucking death warmed over. He didn't have he had the Mankind attire up, but not the mask. So it was Owen, Foley, Mark Henry, who I just mentioned, and the late Luna Vachon. So unfortunately, 2 of the 4 are no longer with us. Luna could not have been nicer, and I had met Luna once before. Luna just was the nicest lady. Mark Henry was cool. He and Owen, I think, were both in the nation at the time. And Owen and Foley were just kind of, as they're signing autographs, they were chatting with each other about their kids and their families and stuff. And so, yeah, got some pictures. And as the wrestlers were filing out of the luxury box to go into the next one next door, Owen stopped. He was the last one out. He stopped in the doorway. Nobody was paying attention to him at this point. Everybody was just buzzing about what had just happened. And he turned around and he said, "Anybody need pictures? Anybody want pictures?" And nobody was even paying attention to him. I saw him. And had to build up enough courage to kind of put my hand up and say, yeah, I'd love to get a picture. And so I got to take a picture with Owen Hart. So in my brief interaction with him, couldn't have been a nicer guy. And that was less than a year before he passed away. Now, I want to give a shout out to John Pollock. John Pollock over at Post Wrestling, he recorded an audio documentary on Owen's final day. It's about 45 minutes long. And interspersed in there were clips from various interviews that have been done with people over the years. Jim Ross's commentary that night from the pay-per-view. He puts sprinkles little clips like that into the documentary. It's not just him narrating the entire time. And there were things I learned listening to that documentary that I never knew before, that actually made me angrier at Vince McMahon and WWE about the situation. Now, we already knew from Brett and others who knew Owen that Owen was very apprehensive about doing this stunt, falling from the ceiling. He had done it at least once before. And that was some of the most jarring audio, by the way, that Pollock played in this audio documentary. And you should be able to download it if you go to postwrestling.com. It's very well done. They played audio from the first time that Owen had descended from the ceiling. He was doing the Blue Blazer gimmick. It was a comedy gimmick. And the idea was that he was lowered about halfway down from the ceiling and then got stuck. Couldn't get all the way down. And you had Jim Cornette on commentary with Michael Cole. What a combo that was. And they're mocking Owen. Look at this guy. What an idiot. He's hanging from the ceiling. He's stuck. Look at this. He's hanging there. And it's eerie to now go back and listen to them kind of making fun of the whole situation. So he had done the stunt once before and just was very nervous and didn't want to do it again. He was going to wrestle the Godfather. He was going to win the Intercontinental Championship at the pay-per-view that night. They interview a fan. I don't know who the fan's name is. At the time, I believe he was living in the St. Louis area. He, I guess, was one of these fans who the wrestlers knew of. I don't know if he hung around the wrestlers. Sometimes he would give them like a ride from the airport to the building. People knew who he was. Some of the wrestlers knew who he was. And the plan was not for him to pick up Owen from the airport, but I guess he was there. Owen saw him and just kind of went to the guy's car and just said, okay, let's go. Like, hey, let's go to the building. And so he was driving Owen. And Owen, they wanted to do a run-through of the stunt beforehand, and he just wanted no part of it. He wanted no part of it whatsoever. He left the building, got in the car with the guy and said, let's go eat, let's go grab lunch. I'll go to the gym. He's trying to avoid all these people who are texting or calling him on his cell phone, figuring, well, if I'm not there and they can't get a hold of me to rehearse this, they may just have to abandon the whole stunt altogether. Until finally Vince McMahon calls him. And he takes the call and hangs up. The guy says, what was that about? He goes, well, that was Vince McMahon. He goes, I've got 2 choices here. I either have you drive me back to the building so we could do the rehearsal for this thing, or I don't go back and I'm out of a job. And I don't know if Vince said to him, you're going to be out of a job, but in his mind, if I don't go back to the building, these guys might fire me. And I got to support my family. So he told the guy, take me back to the building. Take me back to Kemper. And he took him back. And so that was kind of just seeing how apprehensive he was, even more so than I had been led to believe before, was very jarring. Now, they talked about the rigging and the people who were running the equipment and helping out with the stunt. WWE had used a certain person previously for stunts like this. Somebody who was very experienced and did it a certain way. And I guess they did not want to use this guy this time because it would have cost too much money. So to save money, and this may have been, I don't know if this may have been the same person who did all of Sting's stunts in WCW. It may have been the same guy. Too much money. They don't want to pay for it. Instead, they went with a different person out of a different state. And this person had claimed that, I think what it was is that this person had claimed he had assisted in WCW with the Sting stunts. It turned out that he was just an assistant. He was not actually the person who was sort of running the show, so to speak. He was an assistant. He helped out a few times as an assistant. And he had a different way, like a different hook or a different clasp. There was something different about the quick release, maybe that it was mechanism that he was going to use. The other person who WWE would normally use, the experienced guy, said that he would never, ever lower a human being with that particular mechanism from the building. He wouldn't do it. And WWE did not go with him for the stunt on that night. So you hear these stories, and it just makes you angry to think this all could have been so easily avoided. I mean, who knew what was going to happen? But this could have been so easily avoided. And if Owen was this deathly afraid of doing this stunt, why did he not? Owen was a veteran in that company. He wasn't a rookie. He wasn't like a Joe Schmo. And he felt like he couldn't speak up, or it could jeopardize his job. Here's the other thing I didn't know. We almost lost 2 people that night because the original plan was to lower Owen from the ceiling with Max Mini on his back. Now, Max Mini was a mini wrestler at the time who was on TV for WWE, not every week, but they were going to dress him up as a mini blazer, like a mini blue blazer. And the idea was that he would be on Owen's back. They would lower the 2 of them from the ceiling. And when they were, 5, 6, 7 feet off the ground, they would get stuck. And maybe they would take a pratfall and they would fall 5 or 6 feet down to the ground. Total comedy, total joke. That was the original plan. And they had to do a test beforehand where they put like a sandbag on Owen's back just to make sure with the added weight that it would work out. Whatever the reason was, right before they went on the air, they decided to cut Max Mini out of the stunt. They were not going to have Max Mini on Owen's back. If he was on Owen's back, that's 2 deaths instead of 1. Could he have lived potentially? Maybe Owen would have broken his fall. I guess anything's possible. But you got to remember, Owen fell 78 feet from the ceiling. He didn't fall 10 feet, 20 feet, 78 feet. There's nobody who could have survived that. That would have been 2 deaths. And I wonder then if Vince McMahon would have stopped the show, or would he have kept it going? There could have been 3 deaths too. Referee Jimmy Corderas, they interview him as well. He was in the ring. He felt something brush by him. If he was over a couple of inches, Owen would have fallen right on top of him. He would have been a goner too. We could have potentially had 3 deaths in the ring in one fell swoop. And I still wonder to myself, would Vince McMahon have kept the show going? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. I would certainly hope at that point you cancel the show. But this is Vince McMahon that we're talking about here. And there's that mentality that the show must go on. Thankfully, their lives were spared. Owen's, not so much. And it's a very sad story even to this day. You know, everyone talks about the Benoit stuff when it comes to the great wrestling tragedies. And it was, 3 people lost their lives, including an innocent child through no fault of his own. But Owen is still up there, right next to it. If it's not number 1, it's number 2, as one of the all-time great wrestling tragedies. 2 kids and a wife, and all for what? For some stupid comedy stunt that he didn't even want to do in the first place. So it kind of made me angry listening to it, but it actually is a very well done special. I did learn some things from it. Again, John Pollock over at Post Wrestling. For those of you who are interested, that is where you can find it.